It is Mojo Monday, Rick Hale.
Frank
Tell me
Caldwell
how
is
you are. Give me
Mojo
a different
Monday.
answer today. Give me a different answer. How are you?
um, Particularly awesome.
Particularly awesome. I am excited. We're calling this series the Extreme Series. So last week we did Extreme Gratitude. It landed on Thanksgiving week. What are we going to call this series today?
I, how about
Extreme love. Extreme love.
extreme self-love and extreme goal setting? We haven't really gone through that. We should have probably prepped it, but
Listen,
you'll get where we're going.
Here's the thing. Last week on Extreme Gratitude, one of the conversations was about you got to love yourself to be able to give great gratitude. And we really just want to take that conversation forward. And I'm going to go ahead and label it extreme self-love.
I love it.
And you wrote your book, Stop Settling. And in your book, Stop Settling, it's a very long format around a little bit around self-love, is it not?
Of course, you can't give away what you don't have. So
it's a whole book about it, right?
it is. It's how to craft that version of yourself that truly is lovable. And not because the world doesn't acknowledge your worthiness as lovable. The problem is we don't often self-acknowledge what lovable is, and we don't truly embrace our greatness. And we don't always honor where we are. If you're an achiever by nature, you're constantly looking out the windshield. You're looking down the road, mile marker, you're at 100 and you're looking at 200, 300, 5,000. And it's never good enough. And it's never truly fulfilling because it's hard to stop and just smell the roses and be present with what you already have and what you do and who you are really. So that's part of the context today is how can we take a moment and acknowledge the rear view, but now we do want to look down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, what does loving yourself more look like?
100%. So I think some people are going to have a love-hate relationship with where we're going in this conversation, but that's all right. Because the wheel of life is one way you could frame this conversation up, and it's a great way you can frame it up. But we're going to challenge people to do hard things. And I think most people have seen the meme that says marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Being broke is hard, working hard is hard, choose your hard, right? Like there's all those hards. Yet I want to give it a little bit more depth to how we're framing up hard. Go.
Well, I think some of this is, you mentioned it, we had a pregame conversation about it, and we were saying, part of the problem is we often pick goals that are sort of open-ended and don't have finality, and you don't get to raise your hands and run through that, that finish line ribbon.
Yes.
Like the proverbial finish line. So one of the ideas today that we want you to ponder is what is hard, but you could actually time bound it to the extent you can literally plant the two poles in the ribbon and when you've crossed it.
Yeah, it's been a reflection of mine over the last 10, 12, 14 days, Rick, is like if you see somebody running a marathon, there's the ribbon, and then they have that moment where they cross the ribbon with their hands up, and it was really hard to get there. But then there's this period of taking a deep breath afterwards. There's this period of, I'm really proud of myself. But in business and in life, sometimes we have to sign up for the marathon in order to give ourselves that experience. So what I'm saying is, using the marathon as the analogy of something hard in your life, you've got to enroll in something hard so that there's a finish line for you to cross, because the human psyche needs it.
Yeah, progress is your friend when it comes to self-love. And sometimes we become debilitated by the idea of a stretch goal that's so big and intimidating that we give up early, or our subconscious brain doesn't connect the dots to potential and possibility.
Yeah.
And it starts to think, yeah, that was a good goal in January, but here we are in November, and damn, and then you start making excuses, like, well, the market, or maybe something happened in your personal life, or you had a health moment, you got sick, and those are all valid. And we're not trying to disqualify those. So what, now what? I think that needs to be the attitude.
Yeah,
And then, so maybe signing up for a marathon isn't the right answer for January as you set your new goals and resolutions. Maybe it's run a 5K, but instead of making it an annual goal through December, do it by March
yeah.
or
Rick,
February.
this is really my life right now. I set a goal. I think most people that know me know this by now. I set a goal to climb the equivalent of Mount Everest in 2023, which is 29,032 feet. I'm behind, but there is a finish line to that goal that says when I accomplish this, it will be done. Um, and it's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's hard to get on the schedule. It's hard to find a place that creates elevation gain. There's all the excuses that fly at you. Yet I know who I will be as a person when I finish that challenge. And it's
Yeah.
really important to me. And that means I'm probably going to hike out in the snow in December to hit this goal. But it's that important to my psyche that I did that hard thing because it translates into my personal life. It translates into my professional life. It translates everywhere because our psyche needs those things. What are the last hard things you've done in life where you
Well,
actually crossed the finish line?
well, thank you for asking. But before I answer, I just want to acknowledge you. That is hard.
Thank you.
And everyone needs friends in their lives to go. And we talked about this in the gratitude. Like when someone expresses gratitude, receive it, or you've undervalued their gift. And so you said thank you, and that was appropriately cool. And I can't imagine doing that. So hats off to picking something we're talking about. If you want to love yourself more, do something hard, put a flag in the ground. And the flag is a commitment, and then put another flag in the ground, which is the completion, and that run through the proverbial ribbon. So you're going to make it because now you've expressed to the universe. It's not just an inside thought. It's been published and posted. I've seen you climbing, Stone Mountain regularly. That's a bear, and man, hats off. Keep swinging. You've got this.
I
And
really appreciate that acknowledgement. It feels really good to hear you say that. It feels really good when people comment. And man, I'm just it's a good nervous energy. And I also realized I haven't had those finish lines for the previous couple years. I didn't artificially create those in my life. So I was living and thriving or succeeding, but I think the concept of choose hard or do something hard has to have that finish line attached to it, right? And
absolutely.
I am curious. I want to hear what your um last thing where you crossed the finish line. Please share. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's two things that popped into my head because they were big milestones for me. One was write a book, Stop Settling, how to live a regret-free life. And then the second was to record my own Audible. And the book really took a lot of, this is funny. It's easy for me to undersell it. Like my thought just went to, yeah, no big deal, wrote a book. And then I'm like, it actually took a lot
Big
of
deal.
courage.
It's a big
It,
deal.
it is, but it took a lot of courage because of the vulnerable nature that I brought to the story. Like I shared things that honestly I don't share. You just don't run around sharing these stories often. And it actually helped in some relationships with my family that needed to be, patched and, reopened just to heal properly. And by expressing it in a book, man, it almost forced the conversation. So part of doing things that are hard is like forcing that conversation, forcing that behavior, forcing an activity, forcing a relational moment with somebody, because a lot of big goals require more than one person
Yeah.
or require support. Who's your cheerleader? Who's your accountability partner? Who's just your partner in crime, to go knock this out of the park. Without them, it's near impossible. With them, it's so possible. And so that was the Audible was the second half of it. And what made it hard is all of a sudden, I feel like I had to be Matthew McConaughey on some level. I had a friend who texted me. He had just listened to the book. Was it Green Lights? The Matthew McConaughey book.
Yeah.
That dude is so legally cheating when he brings that level of talent to the story. He's such a storyteller. Eh? right on, right on, right on. I even used that voice at one point in my Audible that's not in the book because it just hit me. All right, all right. That's what it was. All
Yeah.
right, all right, all
All right,
right.
all right, all right.
And so, but the vulnerability of saying it aloud was a whole nother level. And I committed to recording it in my own home studio and doing it just because it's one of the things that I hope that people walk away today with. It's not because you want to, it's because you have to. And you have to because when you stop and you really, really dig deep into your subconscious brain and reflect, it's screaming for that accomplishment, that flag, that milestone, that ribbon. It wants to run through it. And my advice today is stop denying it and figure out what mile marker gets you one step closer and make that the finish line in a shorter period of time where you've got context to work with, time bound context.
There you go. And what was the visual of the finish line on the book when it got published?
When I opened that first box, man, and I pulled out a hardbound version, and then it got super real, and my stomach knotted, and then we all have these subconscious fear of failure and what's the world going to think? How are they going to receive it? And it's funny how we tell ourselves stories, and sometimes you have to tell yourself a story just to live into a truth that resonates and feels good. In other words, you don't know what you don't know until something shows up or happens. It's like opening a new business or expanding, maybe the type of work you're doing or the people in your life and going to a networking group you've never been. It's until you don't know, but you have to take that risk.
Yeah.
And part of what I told myself in the book story is that it doesn't really matter. Like I did it for me. I did it for my kids. It was a legacy letter and some, maybe a version of an operations manual that I hope I'm a better grandparent than parent because some of the advice I give isn't the advice that I had early enough. And I had to sort of make amends and course correct, which is a human experience. And so it got real when I opened the book. I held it in my hands and then I got anxious and nervous. What if no one loves it? What if it, becomes irrelevant? What if I'm irrelevant? And, this again, in the spirit of being vulnerable, everyone has that moment relative to big goals and ideas about who you want to be and not necessarily where you are. And my best advice is take a deep breath, play the so what, now what, and take one step in that direction. And then honor the feedback, but don't let it stop you. Honor the feedback, but don't let it stop you. So what, now what?
There you go. So let's round this back. Like, I feel like somebody might be listening to this going, oh, he set this goal climbing Mount Everest, or not Mount Everest, but the equivalent, or Rick wrote an entire book. I don't want you to get hung up on our story as much as I want you to get hung up on your story. And it could be something that is hard to you. And that's what we're talking about here. It could be read 12 books next year. It could be
let's walk around the wheel of life for a quick second.
Yeah, go for it.
So education would be one. What one thing could you do in the next 90 days or before March 31st that helps you feel more accomplished and capable, either from, self-development or educational perspective? It might be, listen to one quality podcast a week for all 12 weeks. That might be something you've never done that, the individual activity doesn't necessarily move the needle, significantly. The collective does. What new habit or strategy or approach that 90 days from now, you're running through the ribbon, that proverbial finish line ribbon? Health. I won't say it's easy, but it's not hard to find things typically in the health category that you could either eliminate from your life or add. Yeah. Family, that could be opening up a wound. I mentioned earlier that part of the cathartic, benefit of expressing yourself is that you create a pathway to mending fences and fixing relationships or just improving a relationship by being vulnerable and open to conversations you've been avoiding. So family's a big one. Relationships, kind of the same thing, but with friends and external, draw, concentric circles. Who else is important enough to have an experience? And maybe it's not fixing something. Maybe it's just plussing something. I intend to have, 3 dinner parties for my inner circle friends that I haven't seen, in the next 90 days or 120, or even just one dinner party, and host it and get everyone, get the band back together, if you will. Romance, spiritual, we can work our way. What I like about the wheel, Brett, is it creates categorical thinking. And it's, remember, we talked about this last week, that once you pick, life is like standing in this big foyer, a big open arena, and all 12 of these, the circles on the wheel of life, which by the way are available, you can download this at rickhale.com under the tools tab for my book, Stop Settling. That's not a plug for the book. It's just available and easy to download a PDF. But once you pick a corridor, a door out of that foyer area, all of a sudden you're staring down a hallway. There are doors down that hallway that are available to open, but weren't available until you picked it. And so these are like 12 doors, if you will. And down each corridor are going to be opportunities to plus and enhance either yourself or a relationship. And ultimately the goal, like we said, this is extreme self-love. You want to love yourself more, do something hard and do it fast, or as quickly as possible, so that you don't lose that focused energy around it. And the wheel of life is an easy way to compartmentalize and to get your brain working and, and listen to your subconscious energy.
I love it. You're reminding me of a really bad joke. And the joke is, Rick, do you know that you have, do you know what the superpower that you can use to walk through walls are?
I think I just figured it out.
It's a door. It's a door.
A door.
A door.
Well, and I heard this from a friend who's an immigrant who struggled to get his, nationality, not nationality, but American citizenship. And he said, sometimes when the door's not available or won't open, climb through a window. And I'm like, man, that's cool. That's a whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Let's do something hard.
Do something hard. Use the wheel of life. Script one thing. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it, but hard enough that you'll love yourself more because you checked a box, and that becomes the new standard and paradigm for normal.
Yeah. And don't tell bad jokes on Mojo Monday.
But anyway, I think that was a great joke, man.
I do think we need to add one last piece. Tell us what it is. Tell your closest friends what it is. If you challenge yourself to do something hard and you keep it private or you keep it a secret, you're cheating yourself the experience of affecting others in a positive way. And I'm going to tell you, the more people I tell about my little hard challenge that I've been working on this year, the more it holds me accountable to becoming that person. And just like you, I'm writing my book. The more people you told that you were writing your book, the more accountable you were around getting it published, right? So whatever you choose, make sure it's not a secret. Make sure people know, because they want the best for you, and you just have to make sure you're surrounding yourself with those people.
You're exactly right. There's accountability. That's one piece of it. Not only just tell people that matter, whose opinions of you matter, who also will be bold enough to remind you that it matters. And then the second aspect are who your cheerleaders. Who's going to be standing at that, running through the ribbon, cheering you on, and make sure you acknowledge and bring them along for the ride. And, sometimes we undervalue or don't ask. The number one differentiator between highly successful and moderately successful is a willingness to ask for help. And there are people whose DNA is to cheerlead. Make sure they're in your camp and that they're aware of what you're doing, because not only is it gratifying and inspiring for you, but you've also fed their love language.
100%. Rick Hale, you know what today is?
It is
Mojo Monday, sir.
100%. Have a good one. Love you guys.